Welcome to the podcast, Restore Yourself, Restore Your Marriage, where it's all about discovering the thoughts that get you in the mood, the thoughts that get you out of the mood, and how creating a deeper connection with yourself creates a deeper connection with your spouse. I'm your coach, Shelly Anderson, coaching you through life, love, and intimacy.
This is episode number 158. Husbands being fed garbage. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's episode. And I am fired up. I had such an amazing opportunity last week to dive into a book that was suggested or recommended I read, and so that I could provide my opinion and my feedback about this book. And what a wild ride it was. I'm not even going to tell you the name of the book because I don't want anyone to go read it. And I'm going to talk about why and some things that it taught me and what it really means for our marriages, what this means for intimacy and the close connection we can have with our spouse. And what it really made me realize is that our poor husbands, even when they are trying to help improve things and they're trying to find answers that are helpful and could help improve maybe some of the challenges that they're facing in their relationship or in their marriage or even just self-development, they can often find things that are really negative and are just plain garbage. So I'm not even going to do the author of this book the decency of saying what his name is or the title of the book, because I don't want any more Google hits. I don't want this to seem like a popular book. So just know that I read a book that was written from a male psychologist. And it was kind of basically about the concept of sex and maybe some things that interfere with how sex is going. So what I ended up finding out as I read this book, I read the entire book. I actually couldn't stop because I was like, I can't believe that this is happening. I can't believe the things that are being written is actually taking place. So what I'm realizing is that there is a major concern here and a major problem. And that is this. Husbands, it's probably mainly husbands who are going to pick up this book because of the title. Husbands are getting information about marriage, about love, sex, and intimacy from other men. What's missing here? Right off the bat, the thing that is missing is the female perspective. Now, it's not that men can't write on it, right? The author is a psychologist, so he clearly has some studies and some education in a lot of things that have to do with marriage and intimacy. But it is still one-sided if the woman's education, if the woman's experience, if the woman's thoughts are not included. This has been one of the biggest problems marriages and intimacy is facing as a whole, because this has been taking place for so long. The information that is out there is mainly from men who have studied men and then just applied their findings from men to women, thinking that all the results were going to be the same, that what was true for a man and his arousal must be the same. There's a huge assumption that how the man works is the same as how the female works. It's just they have different plumbing. They have different body parts. But this is not true. And so when husbands only receive information from another man and it's not balanced as far as having the female side represented, this becomes a major problem, and it just continues to fuel the problems that already exist. The struggles that we're already having are just going to continue to get worse. So our poor husbands, really think about this. Our poor husbands, even with their best intentions, are still getting fed garbage. This is so sad. This is not our husband's fault. This is not our husband's fault. And I hope that we don't hold them accountable when they actually are trying to improve and make things better, and maybe end up with one of these books that is just going to really do a huge disservice to them, and therefore their wife, and therefore the marriage as a whole. So a lot of the books that are out there, if they are written by men, which most of the books out there are written by men, and this is not a bash against men, not at all. This is not about, oh, only women know. It's important for us to realize, though, that we have to be fair and we cannot be biased. Men cannot only read things from other men that eliminate the female perspective and the female anatomy and the female arousal system. If we do, then we are reading things that just tell us what we want to hear. And we are still leaving the wife out. And so this book was also written from a very biased point of view, and it completely left the female experience and the female system out of the book. Oh, he mentions it, but he never talks about it in any detail as to help men understand it and work with it. In fact, it was quite the opposite. Now, what's interesting is if you look at from just like purely sexual, purely pleasure, if you look at the traditional marriage between husband and wife, you're going to find that maybe 60%, maybe of the wife is having an orgasm, is having pleasure in the sexual experience between husband and wife. Maybe. And maybe not every time, and maybe it's not frequent. And so it's better than half, right? 60%. But if you look at lesbian couples and how much they are enjoying pleasure and orgasms, it's much, much, much higher. We're talking 89, 90% where both are experiencing. Now, in the traditional couple, the husband is usually experiencing his pleasure and orgasms almost 100%. It's not 100%, but it's much higher than the wife. So we're seeing that there's this big gap. And there are several reasons for that. But I just think it's very important to even just know, just from a sexual point of view, when there's an understanding of women and how women's bodies work, how the plumbing works, how it's different than men's, how the arousal system works, how the clitoris works, there is just going to be more pleasure and more orgasms. Not that that's the end goal in and of itself, but when there is more understanding, more information, more knowledge, that is a result. And so that's important for us to know. So if our husbands are not learning these things and in detail from the woman's point of view, they're just going to be lacking knowledge. And again, not his fault, especially if he's trying and he ends up with one of these books. Another thing I noticed is that anyone who's called a therapist, a counselor, a life coach, a mentor, a psychiatrist, psychologist, all of these fall under the umbrella of what's called the helping professionals. They help other people. And when you decide to become a helping professional, you obviously have to be educated. You have to receive your certificates, your degrees, your requirements. You usually have to pass tests. And part of that usually comes with an ethical education of what is viewed as ethical as a helping professional and what some of the laws are, the most important laws, right? It's just like doctors are supposed to become a doctor with a do no harm to their patients as their motto. And helping professions are very much aligned with this. We're not supposed to be trying to harm people that we're trying to help, but leaving one half of the equation, one spouse out of the equation, that's not helpful. that will do damage. That is harmful. Not only harmful for yourself and the relationship you're in, but harmful for the other person who's probably going to end up being neglected. So this book definitely was not following the ethics of the helping professions. And so this is common. I see this. And I find that the women who are authoring the kinds of books that talk about sex, they are not being biased. They are sticking to the ethics of the helping professions. They are trying to put the ethics back in because they have been missing a lot. So it's important to keep that in mind when you think about all the information that is out there and available. So with that, going right along with that, is that often when a man is not following the ethical practices, then their solutions are also going to be one-sided, and it's going to be meeting their own needs and their own agenda while leaving the wife's needs and the wife's desires out of the equation, out of the solution. This becomes very one-sided. And if you think about it, it only results in one thing: more sex as the goal, because that usually feeds a man's goal. And it does not talk about building a better relationship. It does not talk about how to create better intimacy or how to create more connection or closeness or even collaboration with your spouse. It teaches none of those things. It just talked about this agenda of let's just get more sex with wild abandon, with no regards to anything. Let's just get more of it. So it was no surprise that after I did a little digging that I could find that this author did have his own agenda. And it was no surprise what some of his beliefs were, and that he very much believed in orgies and having as many partners as you want and are as available. There's not a lot of commitment involved. And I was like, well, of course, they're going to write a book that would justify and support that. Now, the sad thing is that in the title of the book, it's not super obvious that that's what the book is going to be about. So it feels that there's like a sneakiness involved. The hidden agenda is not obvious or clear. You almost think you're going to get the opposite. You're going to get a really good solution that maybe has to do with some other things that you believe in that are good. You think it's going to be a positive book. And it reminds me of just like a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so we need to be aware of that. And we need to know that this kind of information is out there, and our husbands might be exposed to it. We might be exposed to it. And we might not know the difference if we don't have our own thinking skills. So this brings me to the point that really, really, really stood out to me. In this book, it became very clear that the author counted on the readers not having critical thinking skills. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be a genius. It just means that you have to be able to understand how to think critically about the things that you're reading. And he was definitely counting on people to not have critical thinking skills. The way certain phrases are put together, the way he attached certain studies to his own findings, that I was like, well, that study doesn't really support that finding and your goal and your agenda. And so if we don't have some level of critical thinking skills, we can be taken advantage of by books like this. And the thing is like they were leaving out some important messages. So if you don't have critical thinking skills, you're not going to know that. You're not going to know that stuff is actually missing, because they will craft it in a way to be deceiving. So it's important to realize that if we are lacking critical thinking skills, if we don't even know what that means, if we don't know that we have them, if our husband is missing them, if we are missing them, then it will be very easy to be led astray from books like this. And maybe it could even do some damage. This book was teaching quitting. This was the main solution to, I think there were like 17 chapters listing all the problems. The main solution was quit. Leave everything behind. Quit everything. Just go sex nuts all day long, right? Like, this is not the ethical approach of the helping professions. We're supposed to teach people skills so that they can grow, develop, and progress, not quit. If you quit one thing, that becomes a vicious cycle. Pretty soon you're quitting everything. And then what's left? Misery and loneliness. There were no solutions about leveling up and learning new skills. None. So I would caution everybody listening to this. If you ever come across information, whether you're reading it or listening to it or watching it, and their answer is, hey, leave everything, walk away from everything, quit everything that you've ever known, I would be very cautious. I hope all the red flags go up for you, because there literally are hundreds of other solutions that don't involve quitting. Quitting is a vicious cycle, and that's not what the helping professions are supposed to be teaching. They're supposed to teach you skills, how to get through things, through the hard things, because once you learn a skill, you have it for life. It helps you with the next hard thing. If you just quit one thing, then the next time you encounter a hard thing, you're just going to want to quit. If you have a skill, then you're like, oh, well, this isn't as hard as I thought. I have this skill. Skills are where it's at. But this book was like, quit and walk away. It was also teaching escape, right? If you quit, that's an escape. You're escaping something that's challenging. This is not life. Life is not set up so that there are no challenges and no hard times. It's not set up that way. But this is teaching quitting and escapism. And that the only answer is to quit and escape. Think about what we know are forms of escape: drinking, drugs, porn, and leaving things that we have valued behind. Do these sound like good solutions? No, these are usually disastrous, and they usually wreak havoc on relationships. And yet this book is teaching escapism and quitting. This is not good, but think about it. Imagine if your husband was reading this book, right? Imagine you guys have some struggles and he's trying to figure things out, and then he reads this book. This could be so devastating. Now, going right along with that, like I said, the helping professionals are supposed to teach skills. They're supposed to teach, hey, there are a few solutions here. There's not just one, and escaping and quitting is not the only solution available. Helping professions are not supposed to do that. And when we're able to actually help and teach skills, then we are helping improve that person's life forever, moving forward with multiple hard things that they face in all areas of their life, not just quit. This means that there's going to be way more progress in their life, which is invigorating. That feels way better than quitting and not learning a skill, and then feeling even more guilt for quitting and not getting through something. And if we think about escapism and quitting, it can very much promote a self-serving and vicious masturbation cycle. Think about this when it comes to intimacy and sex, right? Oh, your wife doesn't want to have sex as much as you do? Don't just masturbate. Watch porn as much as you want. Masturbate. What they are not talking about in this book is what happens to dopamine. when you masturbate all by yourself. Dopamine is at a certain level, and then you feel pleasure and you masturbate and you have an orgasm, and then everything comes back down to normal. If you are having sex with your spouse, your dopamine levels go back to baseline. They go normal. If you are masturbating and you're by yourself and you're watching porn, your dopamine levels go below baseline. So now you are not bonding with your spouse. Those good hormones and chemicals that are supposed to connect you to your spouse are absent. So you are bonding to nobody. So when this happens on a chemical level, you become more lonely. Men can feel extreme loneliness after they masturbate, not to mention guilt or shame, just loneliness, because that chemical did not take place because you were not with your spouse. So what ends up happening? A greater desire to masturbate even more without their spouse and watch more porn to do it. This is a horrible cycle. People don't talk about this. And this is important information for all of us to know. It's important information for wives to know. And so we have this horrible, horrible cycle. And all of this is usually left out of information about, it's usually left out of these books. It was completely left out of this book. So moving on, when this author did try to talk about female arousal and the female sexual system, he got it wrong. He got it wrong. He talked about females and their sex drive. And I was like, females don't have a sex drive. They have a sex pull, right? And of course, he's not teaching this. So he's perpetuating the problem to any man and husband who is reading that their wife should have the same type of sex drive as the husband. They don't have a sex drive. They have a sex pull. It has to be things in their environment and the things in their circumstances that pull them towards their spouse, draw them in, pull them towards wanting to be close. So he completely got that one wrong. He also did something that I call fake feminism, right? He used a lot of buzzwords saying, oh, women have been oppressed. Women this, look how women were treated in the 50s, right? And again, his only solution was just leave everything behind. And I'm like, well, we don't live in the 50s. Women have come a long way. This is awesome for women. So why are we still talking as if women are totally oppressed? We're not oppressed. We may still need to work on a few areas as a whole in society, but we're not oppressed. But him using these words constantly throughout the book, I was like, you're trying to make women feel more oppressed at this point. I was like, I have my own business right now. Look what I'm talking about. There's nothing that starts a woman from starting her own business, especially in the United States. Like, stop saying women are oppressed and the only solution is to just have more sex with abandon. So what do we do with all this, right? I get a little fired up about this because it just makes me so much more committed to my goal and my mission and my desire to help, because there is so much bad information out there. So, of course, you're going to hear from me that we need critical thinking skills. We need to learn how to think better. And this isn't taught in elementary school, junior high, high school. Maybe if you took a speech and debate team, maybe if you have some legal background, but most of us are not taught how to think, how to challenge our thinking, how to think about our thinking. Once you start to do that, there are multiple skills involved in those things. The level of awareness that we have about the systems and the processes in place already does way more than this one book does. So, of course, I am a big fan of life coaching because it doesn't just teach one skill, it teaches multiple skills that you can use throughout your entire life and in all areas of your life. It is a beautiful ripple out effect. And so I really love teaching life coaching skills because it helps the husband, it helps the wife, it helps your children, it helps communication, it helps so many things. And this is what is missing in today's world is how to think. It's critical thinking skills. And moving forward, think about all the technology that is coming up. We are going to need critical thinking skills now and in the future more than ever before. More and more people are going to try to take advantage of the fact that most people don't have critical thinking skills. So do not allow yourself to be one of them. So what can you do? Sign up for my membership. It is only $39 a month. The Make It Meaningful membership, right? This is what we do. We talk about thinking. This is the basis of the membership, is how to think, how to understand how other people are thinking, how to understand how we are thinking, how our children are thinking, coworkers, neighbors, bosses. We get to understand all of the thinking. It's amazing. And it's only $39 a month. Not only are you going to learn thinking skills, you're going to learn how it applies to intimacy and marriage and relationships and love. And you also get awesome communication skills. As we get to the end of this, I want to just make another final point. Let's share this with our husband and any other men we know, uncles, cousins, brothers, whatever it is, in-laws. We need to share life coaching skills so that we can really obtain these critical thinking skills. Now, think about this. If you're a wife and you want things to be a little bit better in your marriage or with intimacy, this is a gift we can give our husbands. Hey, let's sign up for the membership. Right? We can give our husbands this membership. Tell them to look into it. Tell them to sign up. Man, if we tell our husbands that this membership is talking about sex, they're going to sign up. But what they're going to discover is way beyond just sex. And it's going to just lead to better intimacy, better connection. It will help clarify that difference between the man's sex drive and the woman's sex pull. And finally, if you sign up for this membership, it really helps through the courses to make the point that intimacy is all about connection. It's all about the emotional connection and how that is critical. And it is foundational for pleasure, for intimacy, for all the things that we hope and dream of. For women, the emotional connection is at the heart of it all. And this course, or the courses in the membership and the membership itself, helps teach that. And it helps teach our husbands that, because, oh goodness, they are being fed garbage. Garbage is out in the world. So why don't we give them something better, something from a woman's perspective? They don't need more information, misinformation from men about women. They need information from a woman. And they need information that's not, hey, go watch more porn, right? I don't do that. I don't believe in that. You'll never find that here. So give your husband the right information. Tell him where to find this information. Tell him to listen to this podcast or look into the membership and to sign up. You guys are going to really benefit, not just in the area of intimacy and sex and pleasure, but it will help in every area of your life and his life. So really try to see if you can share this with them, and don't be afraid to do it. The benefits will be awesome. Because remember, the more you restore this type of intimacy with yourself, the more you can restore it with your spouse. Thank you so much for listening today, and I hope you will join me again next week.